today I'm going to react to even more random YouTube videos, and I think I said I was going to do it yesterday, and then I was just kind of tired and I didn't. It's been a couple late night streams back to back, which is fine, but it's kind of like it goes into the next day, but I'm trying to count it like, you know, like it's today's stream, not tomorrow's, but whatever. It'll cross over obviously into midnight here. It's kind of a dumb thing to actually have to do, like, oh, I have this routine, so I want to stream every day. So then I have to beat the clock, so I have to rush to make sure I start before midnight, otherwise, you know, it feels like I'm missing a day. It doesn't really matter, but just to me, it kind of is a big deal, and I typically don't miss days, but there were a few times, actually, like last year and stuff that I did. So yeah, I'll let my suggested videos kind of determine it. There's one thing that this sort of demonstrates, again, let me use my absolutist philosophy lens, like folly favoritism or something, that I could discuss, entertainment and escapism. It'll be seen in like a myopic, marginalized way, that like, oh, you know, this piece of fiction or that piece of fiction, there's a couple fallacies in that, right? Everything is sort of arbitrary. So like, what's the difference between a cartoon made for kids and some existential drama made for adults? In reality, there is no difference, really, because they're both fictional, they're both made up, right? They're both just for entertainment or escapism. You could say, well, like Oppenheimer or something is trying to, you know, change your life or tell you something about the world, but the end result is it really doesn't matter, right, that much, because it's not really going to change anything. It's just fiction. It's just escapism. You know, it's not real. So either it's real or it isn't. Either you're doing something in the real world or you're not. This notion of this halfway of like, oh, The Godfather or something. Yes, you can argue it's better and it's a better piece of work, but it almost just doesn't matter because like, right, it still fits in the same category of something that isn't real and that is basically again, just escapism, and it kind of ends up reinforcing the state that you're in. Right, that's kind of the issue that I have with it too. That's like a cognitive dissonance barrier to really making it or focusing on it, is like, you could make the best, most profound piece of fiction ever, and it's not going to change anything, because we've seen that. Like, what did The Godfather really change about society? Right, the book or the movie? Nothing. It was a good piece of work. People, you know, remember it. They're quoted a lot, but it didn't like change the way that people live, or, you know, start a movement or something the way that, you know, if you're a leader or an intellectual in the real world, right, could do. So it's different. It just doesn't have that impact. I guess you could use the money or success or fame from that to then start a movement yourself, but so that's the thing, is like, there'll be like this weird perception that we focus on the specific, not the larger process. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, right? You could be playing Fortnite, you could be watching TV, you could be, you know, doing like, everything fits in the same category of, it just doesn't really have any special meaning to it, right? People will attach special meaning based on their preconceived notion, but it's just arbitrary. Like, okay, so like, what do you do spending your day? Okay, you go to the gentleman's club and you do something there, or you go and you're drinking wine and beer, and oh, you're you know, playing golf or something, versus you're staying at home playing video games. Like, it's all the same thing, because again, it's just distraction, it's just a hobby. Like, people will try to show a certain ego to it, like, oh, you're more proud of this or whatever, but it's all, again, it all fits in the same category, so it kind of doesn't matter. And then the second fallacy to do with folly favoritism is the fact that, like, folly favoritism that that the half-mass human functions in the contrived state will attribute everything almost to folly. So, or look at it in the same lens. Or like, you can only take, you'll take something, these are the two things, okay. You'll take something more seriously in fiction than you will in real life. So if somebody, again, like you'll worship some character or really quote them, or, oh, you're such a fan of this character, and you go home and you're looking forward to this show or whatever, right? You'll take fiction to heart and really take that seriously in what people say and do. But you won't, if somebody said or did the same thing in real life, you wouldn't take it to heart as much. So you take fiction more seriously than reality in a lot of ways. And it kind of, again, I have the expression, there's more truth in fiction than in reality or than in contrivance, right? There is something to that. And not only that, but it's just like attribution fallacy. It'll be like, the fallacy of influences, that like anything you do that doesn't fit into the NPC mold, this half-mass human functionalism of everyday life in society, like whatever you're expected to do and fit into, and the role that you're expected to fill, right? That if you do anything different, it'll be like, oh, you must have seen that on some show, or they'll even reference like, oh, you're just being like this character in whatever, this show or this movie or anything. Or, you must have been influenced by something, you're only doing that because of the internet, or because of some YouTube video you saw, or because of some influence. The problem with that is you're kind of putting a censor lid on reality by saying these are all things that human beings are capable of doing, right? Whatever it might be, some behavior that, again, doesn't fit in this uniform, controlled, contrived state. So you're assuming their intent, you're saying what they should and shouldn't do. You're treating that as an absolute, even though it might have some mild functional basis that they may or may not even agree with or necessitate. So you have this false absolute, unqualified empirical basis that's being overextended and assuming the intent of everybody everywhere. But the point is, look how sad that is, right? People value things that aren't real, like folly favoritism, over their real lives, over their actual lives, and yet they're supposed to be credible or taken seriously. Right, why would that be necessary? Why would you need to drink and dumb down your senses and hurt your own health and numb your mind? Why would you need to again, why would you care so much about fiction and get invested in that? Folly favoritism, escapism, right? If your life is truly valuable, or you have some measure. So it shows you it's a subversive state, that you're conceding a non-value state. Right, it would make no sense, or again, it would have no credibility. You would have no credibility if that's what you value. And so what happens is you're basically in a position to again, the second part of that is, again, you're a half-mass human function in society, you're indoctrinated, a lot of preconceived notions, roles that you're supposed to fit into. And so you do something that is outside of that. You do something that's just free and self-aware, self-actualizing, any of the various things that human beings can possibly do. And it'll, instead of just looking at that and saying, okay, that's just something that a person can do and they chose to do it, instead you'll attribute it to something. Oh, that reminds them of a scene in a movie, or oh, they're gonna make some reference like that, or they'll even blame that and say, oh, they're only doing that because of this, or oh, they're trying to be like the, like almost like the main character syndrome type of thing. So in other words, you can't be free of the very limited, rigid control, expectations, and preconceived notions of society. Otherwise, oh, it must be you trying to do something outwardly, or like a contrarian, false duality, Bolshevik rhetoric kind of thing. But even beyond that, what it means is that again, I'm trying to think of a specific example I said with this before, but basically you're attributing anything that a person does to some influence. And even if that's accurate, yes, it is true that if they weren't aware of this practice or thing that they came to be aware of based on the internet or based on a piece of media, right, that they might not do it, right? But the problem with that is everything is like that then, right? You wouldn't be such a mindless half-mass human function if you weren't exposed to heavy indoctrination by society. So that's taken as a default, and everything... Did you see what that guy just did? Like, I'm giving him room, and then he goes right for some reason. But no, it's... right, you're exposed to indoctrination, so that's not taken into account. But it's like you're attributing everything, right? Anything a person can think or do or say that they can, naturally just do. You're attributing it and saying, oh, they're only doing it because of this influence. And again, it could be something as broad as the internet. Yes, of course. If it wasn't for the internet, this person wouldn't have this hobby or interest, right? Potentially. That might be true, but what exactly is the internet in that equation? It's like, oh, it's just this mysterious, mythical thing. No, it's a collection of all the knowledge in human history, potentially, right? Every book ever, every movie ever, every, just information. So how can you, marginalize that? Oh yeah, this weird little internet thing is corrupting people's minds. It's like, no, it's giving people so much information and so many resources, right, that it's just like a blank slate. It's like, that'd be like saying, oh, they went to the library, and because they went to the library, now they have picked up some interest that they otherwise wouldn't have had or known about. It's like, but it's not the library's fault. It's not the internet's fault. That's just information that's out there. That's just something that exists, right? And so having access to that shouldn't be the issue. Don't drive drowsy. Good one, dude. Good one. Don't listen to my stream while driving, or you'll fucking be knocked out. The point is, I'll bore you to death is my point. But it's not the library's fault, not the internet's fault, not even the specific book's fault. It's just something that exists that you can be aware of. You can't censor reality. You can't blame the influence. And the other thing beyond that is the simple fact that you're basically able to, again. Let me try to think of okay, let me give a weird example. But somebody starts selling drugs or something, right? And then you'll say, oh, this guy thinks he's Walter White, this guy thinks he's, you'll do that. You'll attribute it to some fiction, not realizing that that's something that people do in real life, not saying it's a good thing, but I'm just saying, whatever it is, you'll attribute it, like, oh, you think your bro thinks he's Walter White, or it just, like, as if nothing could naturally occur. Nobody can ever do anything besides the uniform, preconceived, roles that are set for you in society. And anytime you do, you have to explain it away. Oh, it must be the devil making them do it, or oh, it must be some condition or some, influence that made them do it. And the influence thing is kind of correct, because that's how society is controlled. Like, let's limit people's influence, what they're exposed to, as much as possible. So if everybody's exposed to the same thing, then oh, look how relatable somebody would be, or everybody's exposed to the same things, and more importantly, not exposed to anything else. So therefore, the result is going to be pretty much uniform. So again, the fallacy there is like, oh, it's main character syndrome, because again, people aren't free, or they're not variables, or they can't do anything besides what the limited things that are mandated of them by society. And so any freedom is attributed to something, right? Or any variance is like, you have to try to explain it somehow, not just that, oh, a human being thought with their brain and decided to do something that they're capable of doing inherently, naturally. That's not possible. It's always an influence reaction. Oh, you like this thing because your parents exposed you to it, or because you grew up with it, or because it's in your local environment, or something like that. So you're not self-actualizing from an inherent base state. And then so the bigger thing with the folly favoritism there, again, it's the attribution of influence that is kind of disturbing. So they'll see, this shows you like it's the state of being a trained animal is basically what you're exhibiting, is the fact that you're so controlled that anytime somebody breaks that pattern, right, they sort of break the simulation of society, if you will, they'll do something different, right? They'll do something outward, they'll do something, just that they choose to do. Now, you'll attribute it to something because you don't know how else to explain it. Like, oh, it's like a thing from a movie, or oh, it's like they're only doing it because of some influence, or oh, you'll have like preconceived notions about it. Because what you can't do is have an open mind and think, you know what, I could do that too if I wanted, or I could do anything at any time if I really wanted, right? And you might think of functional basis, but it's not, because there'll be like pretenses of things that are functionless in society, like, oh, you stop at a red light even if nobody's around, right? You obey just for the sake of obeying, right? Unqualified empirical authority. You just do it just because you're a mindless, controlled slave of society. That's basically what it is. There's no actual reason for it, and so like you can't hold that accountable and say maybe what they're doing is more productive by the same measure that you're practicing, or maybe a different measure that they happen to have that isn't this assumed intent uniformity, right, that's forced on you. So again, I want to hammer this point home with the attribution of intention, the idea that basically the attribution of influence, again, you have to try to explain away something like, and again, you see this a lot, especially maybe even with people growing up or younger, it's the influence that's the issue, so we have to censor reality and everything in it. Otherwise people might be influenced a certain way, but that just means that's what they would naturally do, or that's something they can naturally do and they can choose to naturally do, that they're capable of doing. So what you're doing there is you're taking like a monopoly over reality itself, and you're saying people can only do certain things, and anything else they do, they are not allowed to do. And if they do it, it can only be because they're influenced by something, and we'll blame the influence, because nobody could possibly choose to do that on their own, right? Nobody can just simply choose to do something different than what you're doing or what you expect, right? There's no freedom, there's no variance, there's no self-awareness, no self-actualization. None of that exists. Right, people are just mindless NPC uniform things, right? And so defined by not being that, rather than being that, which is an outward contrived state, which is also a result of influence. Like, oh, you're only such a mindless half-assed human function because of your parents indoctrinating you, or because of society restricting and limiting and preconceiving your role and stuff like that. So that's the same thing. And then the thing is that I've said it a million times, I'll say it again, the attribution of influence, just the fact that, again, like maybe, let me even say here, like what I'm doing right now. Oh, I'm only doing this because blank, right? There'll be some preconceived, oh, because I think I'm going to be the next big streamer, or oh, he must want money, or oh, he must want attention, or oh, and the problem even with stuff like that is, but they'll try to explain it in the context of something preconceived. What if it's like a person sat down and thought and used their brain and came up with an idea or whatever, just objective thought, and then that's why I'm doing it. Like, there wouldn't have to be any attribution, like, oh, I'm doing it because of this person or this influence or something else. But Right, it's just shocking that somebody could actually think and choose to do something that isn't the same mindless thing as everybody else. Right, so it must be because of a certain influence that you'll try to attribute to them, because otherwise, again, that's almost how people think. Everything people do is controlled and a reaction to a contrivance state or an influence that is carefully curated. So how could somebody possibly do something on their own? They can't. It's impossible for a person to actually think, or to be self-aware, or to self-actualize, or to do something deliberately and choose it. If they do that, that must be a bad thing. Oh, they're crazy. Look at them thinking to themselves or talking to themselves. That's not allowed, because freedom is bad. And so the ability to think objectively, infinitely about anything, anytime, that's a bad thing, because, oh no, they could actually think and then do something on their own. And that something could be bad or harmful, or it could be good. But, we'll just condemn it broadly and do this propaganda against thought, because we, because we fear overall, like, we can't control it, or we're too mindless sheep, whatever. But the thing is that the way that folly favoritism trickles into there is the fact that it basically tells you that down effect. It's the fact that basically again, the attribution that anything free or variable is like, they must be reacting, because again, everything you do is a reaction mindlessly to some influence. So, a person can't possibly think for themselves, because then you might do the same, or you might be questioning why you don't do the same. So it must be that, everybody does something only in reaction to something else. You can't just think for yourself and do something inherently and just choose it. Right, that's not possible, is how it's kind of framed. It's not possible to be free and choose something and self-actualize right on your own. It's not possible to do that. Again, it must be only because of this influence, or only because of whatever. There'll be some reason, there'll be something. So that's kind of a sad thing about your reality. This is a good indication of like, the simulation theory. So it's nothing to do with that it's a simulation. It's the fact that it just means society is a simulation. Everything is so controlled, and you kind of treat it as a default and don't think about it, which every era of human civilization does the same thing. Every other society does the same thing. So if everything is a false absolute, then it means nothing is absolute. It's the fact that basically you accept the reality that's presented to you, and you think that things are the way they are because that's the way they're meant to be, and you also don't question it. Mindlessly, you obey it. Instead of, again, from an absolutist perspective, it might be an accountable, functional basis. Like, okay, we might do this thing because it might be productive or useful to this end. But even that, you can't assume people's intent. And even then, it's like, it could be done more productively by the same measure. So it's inconsistent, hold it accountable. Or, so in other words, there's a qualifier. Like, okay, you can do it or you can tolerate it, but it doesn't mean it's absolute, and you're going to always be free to be variable and question it, which is kind of the reason why there wouldn't be such uniformity all the time with everything that you do. And so one thing that we will look at here, so yeah, I say I'm going to react to something, well, whatever, it's a good topic anyway, but the thing is that, again, I'll say it once more, it's a very kind of important concept, that it's kind of a sad reality, or it's kind of a strange thing, that again, you'd have to attribute everything to something. Because basically you're saying that people can't think for themselves, and everything is a reaction to influence and externality, but not just a reflection of objective inherent reality that you would say, it's something, it's this influence that you're reacting to, or it's a specific thing. But that only can reflect something about reality. So think about it that way. You're taking at face value that this kind of the initial mindedness. You take everything at face value and focus on that, but you don't see the larger process behind it. So it'll be, right, you're not aware of the nature of the process, so you take it seriously, take it at face value, and you're easily controlled by it. So imagine doing that. So you would take fiction seriously. And you would actually say, oh, look, this guy's being like this character, or oh, this guy's doing this because of this show, or oh, you're only thinking that because you saw this in a movie. Instead of realizing, wait a second, the whole point of those things, right, fiction, etc., the whole point of those things is to illuminate something about reality. So you're focusing on, oh, the character, or oh, the movie, or oh, the influence of having seen it, or something like that, instead of realizing, oh, it's not about that, it's that can reflect something about reality. That's telling you something about reality. That's, illuminating some nature, the nature of a process in reality. So instead of dismissing it as, oh, it's because of fiction or influence, you realize, oh, that's just anything that you observe or do or experience can only show you, right, and reveal to you the nature of some process or some reality, right? Or like I say with the opposite interpretation thing, like this is how I kind of would say it. A half-mass human function may use polyfavoritism, escapism, entertainment, or influences to basically use those things to basically either reinforce the contrivance state, right, to distract. So again, do you use polyfavoritism, escapism, influences, etc.? Do you use that to reinforce the contrivance state that you're in, to distract from it, to overcompensate for it? Or do you use it to illuminate it, to observe it, to remove the need for it, to understand the nature of the process, right? Do you use it to, again, distract from it, or to kind of distract from it and reinforce it, or to be objective about it, to sort of reveal the nature of the process, to kind of observe the nature of the process, right? So one of them would be taking it at face value, like, oh, look at this fictional thing and look at this character. The other would be like, what does this reflect about reality, and why does it even appeal to us? And certain, again, like repression leads to obsession and things like that. So you can explain everything away with a process like that, the reason why that influence is desired in the first place. And so, alright, so maybe now I'll react to something. That's good, because I sort of fit in an absolute philosophy discussion into there anyway. And that's what I'm sort of trying to react to some of these things from that lens, even though that's kind of how I would do it anyway. So I'm looking at, as I've done in a lot of these anyways, I'm looking at like my suggested things on YouTube, right? In the sense that we are at KFC. with a light Yagami thumbnail short. When bro asks breast or thighs, and I say personality, we are at KFC. Okay, that's not really... Bro is so rare in this generation. I guess I don't really understand. I mean, it's a lame attempt at a joke, but when a guy asks breast or thighs, and I say personality, and we're at KFC, like, you know, you can say like, oh, you don't get it, but there's not really anything to get. I mean, that's really weak. Okay, we're getting a clip from Suits. We're getting a clip from Dexter from Suits, where this she got humbled by him right away, like influencer lawsuit, and then Dexter, some girl at the grocery store being whatever creeped on by a guy. See, that whole thing is kind of sad too, because that's how people perceive everything, right? Like the thing with Michael Jackson or whatever. What if somebody's genuinely being nice, but it'll be assumed that you it'll be assumed that you know, that you what do you call it? I forgot what I was gonna say. Like, it'll be assumed something to do with influence, or just okay, let me try to actually potentially react to a video, but it's a situation where another light Yagami thing. I let the orphan kid... Oh, I think I already saw this. I let the orphan kid steal my wallet because the only thing I had in it was a family discount coupon. And it's like light when he's about to laugh. What happens if you cross a spider with a gopher or what? Spider? A goat embryo. I like how some of these videos start. Like, it's just, what would happen if you did this? You know, like, there's this one channel that's really famous for that. What would happen if you took a crossbow and stuck it in a ship and did this? Like, it's a very specific question that nobody would ever ask. It looked like they were after something far more valuable. You see, when spiders were farmed in huge numbers for silk, this, I didn't actually know this story. So they took the DNA of a spider, put it in a goat, and then the goat's milk basically was usable as silk, or it could turn into soap. The goat got violated. The goat needs a Spider-Man costume. He makes it sound so simple. Like, oh yeah, that's all you had to do. Take the DNA from this, and like he made it sound very, very oversimplified. Woman's niece accidentally exposed that her husband and sister are having an affair. Okay. How old are you? 5? This seems innocent enough, like they're doing that, but why are you recording? That's sometimes what you always have to ask. Right, like, so how genuine is that? This could just be, I don't know, it's like the... Why record this and why post it? Like, as if you knew this was going to happen. Or like, why were you already recording or whatever? And so what happens is you're able to basically, right, but that's kind of an interesting scenario. So like a kid will inadvertently admit that or something, right? Or like, you know, you'll think you're fooling the kid, like, oh, we're just talking, we're just hanging out. Maybe it is too. Again, these are where like preconceived projections ruin everything, that you always assume something. Right, that you're able to right, it could be totally innocent. You're just, well, but then I guess you okay, be upfront about it, but as if you need permission, right, that you're so possessive and insecure. But, you know, you assume that, like, oh, a girl and a guy are hanging out, and they, again, there's 8 billion people in the world, and oh yes, you know, you can't do that. Somebody of different genders can't interact with somebody else, or must be sexually motivated. There's no other scenarios that can exist. Or even like, you know, like what we were just saying, Michael Jackson couldn't have just been a nice guy or trying to help kids out. It can't just be something positive that you do. Right, we always assume a negative, and what I reject about that especially is we assume the negative of a random individual, right, some random stranger, but we don't assume the worst of government or structure or empirical power authority, right? We're very skeptical. Oh, look at this guy, look at this individual guy, you know, and you assume something bad about that, but you don't when it comes to government or things like that. Right, you give them the benefit of the doubt because they're out of sight, out of mind, ruling you by omission, and then you ignore, or then you hyperfixate on the thing in front of you, like something flaw or whatever. And it's especially true, like if they don't feel the need to justify anything, they kind of just, you know, your projections are baseless, but again, like, oh, they're not putting up the adequate performative aspects, or overcompensating, or like justifying, or, you know, basically the fallacy of permission. But the reason why they don't do those things is they don't feel the need. They have nothing to hide, or they don't, you know, they're not trying to prove anything. So why does it matter? But no, like, let me discuss this one concept too, like the like invisible walls in society, almost like you defer to everything. It's artificial, but you kind of are on rails. You kind of keep doing the same thing over and over, and you kind of accept the fact. You kind of treat it like, you know, you restrict yourself and you treat everything as absolute and kind of limit your horizons. kind of like where you're deferential, right? You defer to contrivance as if it's validated, but then it's actually, oh, this contest of contrivance, like, oh, you have to bypass it or something. If you actually take it seriously, that's somehow a bad thing. How many years was it? Okay, I can't even read this one, so I don't even care. There's some Buzz Lightyear at the bottom. How many years ago was 2016? And so... you would think there'd be a way in the day and age to have high beams without it blinding the other person, whether it be something on windshields that's light resistant, or whether it's the lights themselves that, again, they can illuminate more without being blinding to the eyes. Right, you would think that would not be an issue in this day and age. Part of the collective mass production kind of thing, where things are done for mass productive quality, not for actual quality. Like mass productive capability, I mean. We should do like little games and challenges, like when we're doing this, like, okay, try to name as many whatever countries as you can, or something like that. There are so many countries that you genuinely like never ever hear about, and just like, you know, you like a very surface level knowledge of them. That's what you can't take for granted. Like, you can criticize your own country, but you know, it's still better than most others probably, but there's like a balance to it. And I say always, like, not in service of contrivance or like one over another that you would point out as flaws. Like, you're just doing it as a standard, like, okay, that is a flaw. I think that's enough. Alright, forget it.